Hi, I'm Kate Danley and welcome to the Kate Cast. Okay, my guest today is Travis Richey. You might know him from his YouTube channel, Sivartis, which has had over 2 million hits. Come on. He's also the star of Robot Ninja Gay Guy and he plays Inspector Spacetime on Community. Not to mention the fact that he has been killed so many times on Dinocroc versus Supergator. Oh yeah. You're going to hear this story. Sit back, relax, and meet Travis Richey.
Who am I gonna talk to today? What will I ask them and what will they say? What will they say? What will they say?
Hi, I'm Kate Danley and welcome to the Kate Cast. I am here with actor and producer Travis Richey.
Hi.
Hi, Travis. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me, Kate.
So, when did you start becoming interested in acting and performing?
I was 14. I was a freshman in high school, and I'd actually acted throughout my middle school and grade school career. I remember I was cast as Jack the Giant Killer in a little grade school production, and actually I was cast as the knave in Alice in Wonderland. But my parents divorced and I had to move to a different school in the middle of the production, so my best friend Keith had to take over the role. I was really jealous because he got to eat Pop-Tarts because he was, the queen had the tarts that was being sold. The real beginning happened when I was a freshman in high school, and I was cast in a production of Godspell my freshman year. The director of the musicals was new that year too, so she hadn't had any favorites at our high school yet, and so and usually a freshman wouldn't have a chance in a school of like 2,500 people, and there were only 10 people in the cast. She wasn't doing Godspell like I've seen sometimes where they'll cast 15 extras or divide the roles into 2 or something like that. She was just doing 10 people, and so the odds of me getting it were slim. And I remember I still am kind of amazed at myself, because in the audition, I went in and we sang, we had to sing Prepare Ye the Way of the Lord. And I went in there and I sang it, and it wasn't great. It wasn't good. I was timid and nervous, and I sang, and they were like sitting out there in the audience, and they said, okay, thank you very much. And I was like, you know what? Can I do it again? I feel like I can do better. And they said, okay. And so I summoned it up, and I just belted it, and it was awesome, and they cast me. And so then I was one of 10 in this group of, we got to be really close-knit, because we were just, it was just the 10 of us, and that should be a TV show. But then, by the end of it, I knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Did you have a happy childhood?
Most of it was pretty good. There were some issues I had. My parents divorced, and they had a long, kind of drawn-out custody battle over me. And I was mostly insulated from that. I benefited from the parents trying to buy your love type of thing that happens. Unfortunately, my mom remarried to a man who was abusive, and so I was in that kind of age of 12, 13, 14, I was really unhappy. I grew up with Bell's palsy, which was a tough thing to, and basically it's a paralysis of one side of the face, and so I got made fun of a lot because kids are just tiny little assholes, and so I was dealing with that. I was dealing with my sexuality that I didn't really understand because in that day we didn't have internet, so being attracted to other boys, who knew what that was about, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. All I knew was that it wasn't normal, and so yeah, it was really, really rough, about as bad as I could have expected, emotionally. Yeah. But there are a lot of things that I appreciate about it too. Like, my mom has always been a source of just joy and strength for me, and I think being the one that got made fun of as a kid, I think, made me a more empathetic person, and it's also why I loved acting, because the goal, the thing I loved about acting was becoming someone else, living someone else's life for a few hours, or as much as I could, and that was, of course, appealing. Yeah. And that's what led me to it.
Did you continue acting throughout high school?
I did. There were some roadblocks. My parents would punish me for having, like, I wasn't a good student.
Okay.
I breezed through, grade school and middle school because I was smart and, I just did well. And high school was kind of where you started having to do work, and I wasn't good at that part. I was really good at tests, and I knew a lot, but putting in the work was not good. So my parents would punish me by not letting me be in the school play. So my sophomore year, I did Grease. We did a citywide. There were 5 high schools in Wausau, Wisconsin, and we did a citywide Shakespeare project. And I auditioned and got in as Theseus. I'd always wanted to play Puck growing up because my mom exposed me to Shakespeare we went to a place called Spring Green American Players Theater in Wisconsin. It's an outdoor Shakespeare theater. It's amazing. And what happened was 3 of the actors from that came up to Wausau and directed this citywide Shakespeare project. It was huge, and we played at the Grand Theater in Wausau, which is like a 1,000-seat theater. It's enormous, and so that was an experience. And then my junior year, I was not allowed to be in what was it? I still feel bad about it because I've never been able to do this play. Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh.
I was going to be Orin, the dentist, and I wasn't allowed to do it. And then I got caught for cheating. I got caught for literally changing a grade on my report card, and so I was suspended for like 3 days. And I was so afraid of my stepfather beating me that I called my dad and told him I wanted to move down to his place. So I went back to my hometown of Lake Mills and finished up my junior year there. And then that spring, that school, which was a small school, I only had like 69 people in my class. We didn't do a spring play. And I felt that was wrong, so I went ahead and put on a spring play, and we didn't have any budget, so we had to do something that was in the public domain, so I produced Midsummer Night's Dream.
That's fantastic.
In the park. And I cast myself as Puck.
Awesome.
And then had to take over Bottom because the guy who played Bottom dropped out, so I had to shift over to that. And we cast Puck. So once again, I wasn't able to play Puck, but I managed to get that in Minneapolis when I went to school in Minneapolis.
Were your parents in the arts?
My mom, my dad was not. My dad came from kind of a military household, and he had that kind of bearing about him. And he never really supported my career goals. My mom, though, had always wanted to be an actress, and she came from a family that was huge and really appreciated. Like, her mom was an English teacher, my grandmother. I have aunts and uncles that are teachers, and my mom loved acting and kind of had that unfulfilled dream of being an actress. And she would rehearse with me and teach me how to act. And she was a Playboy bunny for a couple of weeks, not in the magazine, but working at the club.
Okay.
And so that didn't last very long. But the performance, I think, was in her blood. So.
What's one of your favorite memories of your mom?
There are so many things I remember about my mom. One of the things I hated about moving with her and my stepdad up to the country was that it was way out in the country.
Yeah.
It was a farm. When we moved there, we didn't have running water, so literally that first winter we used an outhouse. And it was this old German farmhouse. Anything that was challenging in life, my mom called a great adventure. Anything that was new, you were experiencing for the first time, it was a great adventure. I remember trucking out into the forest, into someone else's woods, and going out to their sugar shack, which was a maple, they would literally tap all the maple trees and have hoses, and all the hoses would lead the maple syrup to this one vat in the middle of the woods under a shack where it would be boiling away. And then after it boiled to a certain amount, they would take the maple, what was left, into the house to boil, or into the whatever closer to wherever they were to boil the rest of the way. And just exploring that is one of those great memories I have of my mom. And there's so many. She was good. The thing that I benefited from, I think, from as far as she was concerned, was I was her third son, and my brothers are 10 and 12 years older than me. So by the time I came along, she was very laissez-faire about raising a boy. She kind of assumed that that there was a good chance I might not live past 18 because I might injure myself or kill myself. But that was just a risk she was willing to take, and it turned out okay. It turned me into kind of a self-reliant person.
Yeah. After high school, did you go to college?
I did. I went to the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, in Minneapolis. I was on my own mostly. I I was kicked out of the house the summer before of my dad and stepmom's house because I wrecked their '93 Thunderbird.
Oh, how'd you do that?
Well, I was showing off to my stepbrothers, and I had him and his friend in the car, and we were driving. I had found this spot that was kind of in the country where the roads were kind of hilly and twisty, so we were driving along those, and it was cool because you go down a hill fast and it makes your stomach kind of jump. And so I was showing off, and we were going way too fast, and we were driving on one of those, and I missed the road at one point and caught the edge of the road, and I literally rolled the car. And we were all very lucky to escape relatively uninjured, and we all had our seatbelts on, but they weren't insured, and so the car was like a total loss. And so they were upset, and my stepmom at the time was not friendly towards me, especially because I put her son in danger. And so at 17, I believe, I was kicked out of the house. And
where did you live?
I went to live with my best friend's parents, who kind of brought me in, and so they had me for the summer. This was after I graduated from high school, so it was only for that summer, and I had a job at a local gas station, and so then I went to college, and I basically had to put myself through school. I did the applications myself. I got some help from my aunt and grandmother, who helped with the housing, so they helped get me into a dorm. But I had independent status, which meant that I was, I didn't have the help of my parents. I had to get something from a school counselor, but that allowed me to get some extra loans and stuff for school. So. And I didn't do well in college. I went into the theater program, and I didn't particularly care for it because there was too much emphasis on things that I didn't care about, like costuming and set building and stuff like that. And I always kind of knew that my love was film and television, and there wasn't a film and television program at the University of Minnesota. Even though it was a huge school, there wasn't a program like that. So I started producing my own stuff, like writing and producing my own stuff that was terrible. But and we had no budget at all, and it was after I left school. It was I spent about 2 years trying to make it work, and was just bad at doing anything that I didn't care about. Like classes that I found fascinating, like astronomy and anthropology and sciences and stuff like that, I did great at. But classes that I didn't care about, like logic and other math. Advanced math courses that I couldn't ever see using, and languages, like French at 8 in the morning was not my thing. In fact, anything at 8 in the morning was not my thing. But I spent about 2 years working at it, and then left, and then went to live with my brother in Wisconsin, and then came back to Minneapolis and tried again a little bit, but mainly was just working and hanging out and trying to figure out how to get to LA or New York, where I knew I needed to be. But in that time, I started, it was right at the dawn of the digital production age, where little mini DV tapes were coming out. So the ability to record something in digital, transfer it to a computer in digital, edit in digital, and export it back with virtually no loss of quality. It was the first time that's ever been able to happen, and I knew that this was going to be huge. And if I'd only had the money to invest in setting it up in the studio, and also my other big mistake was trying to produce a 30 to 45 minute short as my first movie. I produced something called Footwear. It was a horror movie spoof about killer shoes. And it turned out that 45 minute runtime on that was way too long. And if I'd been smart, I would have done short, 4 or 5 minute sketches.
Does it still exist anywhere?
It does. We actually remastered it. And I am working on putting the DVD out and be available, mainly for people who helped fundraise for Robot Engine and Gay Guy. They're getting a free copy of the DVD. So,
how did you end up in Los Angeles?
It took, from the time I left school, it took about 5 years for me to actually get here. And part of that, I actually wish I hadn't taken so long to do it, but one of the things is that I knew I needed a job. I knew I needed to be able to just live here, because I knew that it would take, I knew it was foolish to think that I would move here and within 2 weeks become famous. I knew it was going to take at least a year to become famous. So I felt very, very ahead of my game with that knowledge. But I got a job at Sprint selling cell phones, and I specifically had a job with a company that was everywhere so that I could transfer. and have a job here. So I worked there for a year, and then after a year, you were able to transfer stores. So I used that to move out to LA.
Okay.
So that's when I moved out here. Just past my 9-year anniversary, actually. I left Minneapolis on January 29th.
Okay.
And it was weird because that winter it had not snowed yet.
Okay.
And so it started snowing that day as we were packing up the U-Haul. And we drove out to, it was 3 days to drive out to LA. And they had a blizzard, basically. It didn't stop snowing the entire time. So we escaped Minneapolis just in time.
Tell me a little bit about your first couple years in Los Angeles. How were those?
Interesting. It was, speaking of Sprint, there was a big difference between working, I think maybe any company in Minneapolis and then working for them in Los Angeles, because it was a game. It was a different game here about, it wasn't about being the best, because in Minneapolis I was actually a really good salesman.
Yeah.
Because I loved, I'm a big nerd, so I loved cell phones and I loved Sprint and I loved, so I was really good at selling it. But then out here, it became about who you knew and who you kissed up to in order to get promotions and stuff like that. So I didn't do very well, and I was kind of relegated to a customer service position in the store, and like people coming in already hating me because they had an extra $100 or $1,000 on their bill that they didn't expect. So that was rough. But then I got recruited by Starbucks to be a manager for Starbucks, to be an assistant manager, and so I went to work for there for a while. And I thought it was going to be much better because I loved the idea of, I loved coffee, and I thought it was going to be interesting to have a job where, the customers, you're doing something good for them, and the worst problem they could possibly have could be solved by a free cup of coffee. It amazed me how angry people could get over coffee. And B, I was on my feet for 40 plus hours a week, and I found that I didn't have enough energy to do anything else. And so, and also it was still about the game. In that period, I started taking acting classes at a place called Scott Sedita Acting Studios here in LA, and I loved them. I did the comedy course for about a year, and then I did his drama course, which was amazing. And it was all on camera, and it really struck home the difference between acting for the stage and acting for camera, which is it's something that most stage actors don't realize when they move to LA. So after I got fired from Starbucks, which turned out to be the best thing for me because I got unemployment insurance, which allowed me to work as an extra, which normally I wouldn't have been able to afford because it's minimum wage. And so I did extra work for about a year, maybe a little longer, and that's what allowed me to do, it got me on set, so I was able to see an actual working set, and B, it allowed me to get my SAG eligibility, which was my goal at the time. And so as soon as I got my SAG eligibility, I was able to, I actually left extra work and got a job as a temp at Disney. So I was working at Disney for about a year and a half. In that time, about the first 3 years I was in LA, I had my first serious relationship. And we lived together for a couple of years, and it ended very badly. At the same time that I started doing work at Disney, I moved out and kind of found a room in a guy's house who was renting a room. So I moved in with him, with my dog, Dot, who I've had since, she's 12 years old now, almost. Aww. So I've had her since she was 3 months old. So she moved with me out to LA, and so she's been with me the whole time. Anyway, so this guy, I was living at his house working at Disney, and the cool thing that did is allowed me to have extra money. I mean, I was actually earning good money, and it wasn't. I was working at a desk, so I had energy at the end of the day to put into other things. So I was working on my fitness. I was working on starting to produce for myself. That's when I discovered YouTube in 2006. I was watching the Vlog Brothers. And so I said, you know what, I want to do that. And so I started something called a Musecast, which was the very first group of vlogging project where we had 5 different entertainers one day of the week doing a video where they would document their careers. And I did I was Tuesdays, and then we weren't huge. We got maybe 300, 400 subscribers that first year, but it was enough so that people wanted to see more. And so I recruited, and I actually held auditions for a new group of 5, and that did the second year. And that was actually great. I met some people from, I met Eric. I didn't meet Eric while you there. I actually met Eric doing extra work, but Eric was doing one of the weeks of the Musecast for the second year. And seeing how creative he was and how good of a writer he was, that's when I decided that I wanted to work with him. And so, and in the meantime, I was also doing a podcast called Boy Cow Radio, which, if you search for it, you may or may not be able to find it anywhere online. I am trying to get it. I think I want to put it up on iTunes if I can, because it's worth listening. It's me and Curtis Friesel, one of my friends from Acme, who we were just doing a radio podcast about nerd things. You know, anything, movies, video games, comic books, anything nerdy, and it's really funny. But the other thing that allowed me to do, working at Disney and having this extra money, was start to take classes at Acme, which I had heard about from Will Wheaton. He was talking about it on his blog, and I went to see him in a show. And when I found Acme, it was at the time, very friendly family kind of atmosphere. Everyone was very supportive of each other, and it was a large group, and it was really great to be a part of. And so I started working my way up through the ranks of that. I mean, it all flows one thing into another, and once I began producing for myself, I realized that I always would do that because it was a way for me to act, and I didn't have to wait for someone to cast me in something, and which I think is so important for young actors. Everybody should be producing for themselves, because especially with the cost of it right now, there's no reason not to. Once I was in Acme, and the Musecast was, the second year of the Musecast was on, I got into another relationship with a guy who was just graduating from the USC Cinema School, and we decided to move in together. It was a perfect situation where I was a producer, an actor, and writer, and he was a director, and so that allowed us to work together, where normally a relationship wouldn't have been in the cards for me, with as much time as I was spending doing a survival job and producing and taking classes and working on my career. It would have been impossible to really have a healthy relationship. But the logic was for us to work together would give us that extra time. And so we started planning the production of not only Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, but also other web series and other videos.
How did Robot Ninja Gay Guy get started?
That's an excellent question, Kate. So during the second year of the Musecast, I was, really noticing how funny Eric's Musecast episodes were every week. He put a real effort into it, and so I contacted him. I think it was probably April of 2009, and I was just planning my move into this new apartment, which we had scouted specifically to be like the set for this new show, and we had to check the showers because I had two hot guys in the shower, so I needed a shower that would work for that. And so I contacted Eric Loya and said, "How would you like to be the head writer for this web series?" And I said, "It's called Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, and I don't have much more than that," because it was basically it was based on a pitch that Curtis Friesel had brought to me when we were looking at a bunch of different web series to do for Xbox was doing a contest at the time. And anyway, in that summer, Curtis was too busy. He was working on his own projects. He was working on a couple different movie scripts, so he didn't have time to work on it. And I was really anxious to get started on something. So Curtis said, "Go ahead and work on it." And so I contacted Eric Loya and said, "How would you like to head write?" And I think it was I didn't even send him a message about it. I think it was a comment in one of his Facebook posts or something like that. And so he said, "Sure." And then we didn't talk about it. And then in May, he sends me 3 scripts by email and says, "Look, I haven't heard from you. I just wanted to do something. I'm not at all attached to these scripts. I didn't even name the characters because I don't want to get attached to them. I just wanted to do something. And if you like it, let me know. But if you don't, that's totally cool." And I loved them. I was laughing out loud reading these scripts. And so I said to him, "We're going to go into production on these next month, or in July." And so we moved into our apartment in the middle of May, and I spent June trying to prep the scripts. We did some rewrites. We were moving into the apartment and trying to get equipment, trying to afford whatever I could spend on camera equipment and lights and anything I could find. And so in July we went into production on Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, and we thought that we were going to do 3 or 4 episodes a day, and then we would have maybe 3 shooting dates for 12 episodes. The first day we were shooting in the middle of July with 3 1K lights, which get very, very hot, in my apartment, which only had 1 little air conditioner, and we were boiling, and we got about an episode and a half done. And we were trying to shoot with 2 cameras, but they were different kinds of cameras, and so the workflow was very weird.
Yeah.
And so we learned a lot.
Yeah.
But if you look at those first couple episodes of RNGG, they're very rough, technically speaking, than following episodes. In August of 2009, I relaunched my YouTube channel with the pledge to do a brand new comedy video every single week.
Okay.
And I did for a year and a half. Added to that, the next at the beginning of 2010, I added a weekly vlog, so that I would be a vlog and a comedy video. It was a lot of work.
I was going to ask, how did it feel like producing something every single week?
It was amazing and stressful. The pressure that I put on myself to do that was kind of incredible, and I don't know how I did it. I really don't. But because I was producing the comedy videos at Acme for their show, so I figured it out once, or during that year and a half, I produced about 600 minutes of comedy content, of scripted, or not counting the vlogs.
Wow.
Of original scripted content. That's like 6 full-length feature films in a year.
That's crazy.
On no budget. I mean, I spent maybe about $10,000 all told with equipment and food to feed people.
Yeah.
It was very gratifying to see the fans really engage with everything I was doing. Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, 2 Hot Guys in the Shower, Smiley Town.
Yeah.
And to see our fan base grow from, we had 400 subscribers when we started, to over 10,000 subscribers, which isn't huge by YouTube standards, but that's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And our fans are very engaged and very and they love the show, and so it means a lot to me.
Well, now, in thinking about that time, like, what was your favorite project that you worked on?
Oh gosh, well, Robot Ninja and Gay Guy it's the thing I'm most proud of by far, because it is a show. I mean, it's a really good show. Yeah. The writing is strong. Working with Eric Loya and I have I think a great working relationship. It was just one of those things that working with Brian Giovanni and working with Ryan Churchill as Robot, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And when I'd be editing, the idea of editing something and you watch it over and over and over again, and it would still make me laugh.
Yeah.
When I'd watch the finished product, and so it was just one of those great things. I'm so excited to do more, and it's it deserves to be seen. It deserves to have a bigger life than even it does now. So I'm working very hard at doing more of that.
Now you produced a Prop 8 spoof that just exploded. Can you talk to me a little bit about that project and how it started?
I'd seen this guy, John Marcotte, was doing this, was trying to get an initiative on the ballot in California that would ban divorce in California. And I'd seen this was in fall of 2009, he had gotten a lot of press. He'd been on CNN, Huffington Post. He'd gotten some press from this thing, and I thought, well, if we did a PSA for that, we could probably get in on that press a little bit. And so we produced, a very simple PSA that took the arguments against gay marriage and made them against divorce. And it was ridiculous as the actual Prop 8 thing was. The idea that people were going to start marrying their dogs, or that they were going to teach gay marriage in school, or all these things that. So I edited 2 of them together. One of them that I thought was kind of on the line, and people would watch it and be like, "Is this real, or is this not real?" And then another one that I thought was just pure ridiculousness. I mean, it was just so over the top that I thought nobody could possibly take it seriously. It was the second one that really hit hard. It's the one that got posted to the Huffington Post, and it's amazing that there were still the number of people that watched that and said, "Oh, is this real? I think I banned divorce." And it blew my mind. But yeah, by the end of it, we were on Perez Hilton, we were on the Comedy Central blog, we were on CNN, Huffington Post, and so overnight it got like 150,000 views, which was amazing. It was great, and so nothing really came of it, but it was just one of those. I'm very proud of it, and so I can usually talk to people, especially in the LGBT world, where it means a lot to me to be a role model, to kind of be a supporter of LGBT rights, and also for the young kids that should they need help kind of realizing that, you know, things do get better. And having been in that really tough place when I was a kid, I want to be able to help them get out of that too. But it's very cool to be able to talk to someone in the LGBT world and you know, say, hey, do you remember that divorce ban? Well, I did the PSA for that, and be like, oh wow. So it's nice to be known for that.
In addition to Robot Ninja Gay Guy, you're working on some other new web series.
Yes, we had 4 series that were ongoing. We had RNGG, we had Two Hot Guys in the Shower, Smiley Town, which was the kind of Sesame Street spoof, and also a series of Mac vs. PC ads. I've retired the Mac vs. PC ads. We ended that with a Truth or Fail episode, which is a YouTube game show.
Okay.
And we did an episode of that, and I think it's a great episode. If you love the Mac vs. PC things, look for Mac vs. PC Truth or Fail. But we retired that, so now we've got those other 3 shows. We're going to do more Two Hot Guys, more Smiley Town, more Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, and now we're adding another series called Time Wrecked to the mix, which is it's a more dramedy. You know, it's a more filmic comedy. You know, it's not slapstick. It's not a sitcom like RNGG is. It's more serious. It's a time travel thing. About this group of time travelers that comes from the 30th century. They're going to the 25th century in order to prevent this catastrophe that happens with the human race, and they end up overshooting the mark and winding up in today. So it's kind of a fish out of water, you know, Third Rock from the Sun type of story. I can't say too much about it, but the plans that we have for that series are so incredibly amazing that it would blow people's minds. It will blow people's minds when we finally are able to put it all together. In
addition to all of these series that you're producing, you're also being cast all the time here in Hollywood.
Yeah, it took a long time. Like as I mentioned, I've been here 9 years. I did 1 episode of something called Sons of Tucson that I shot in 2009. Ooh, wow. And it aired in 2010. But then in 2011, I did 5 episodes of television. Which was a record for me. I did the event at the beginning of the year, which was a really cool scene. I got to be shot in the back of the head, and then I did Community, where I was playing Inspector Spacetime, which is a tiny role because one of the characters on the show is watching this show on TV. But it exploded on the internet, and so fans are creating an entire history of this fake show online. And then at the end of the year, I did a really great role on Pretty Little Liars, which is I'm so excited for people to see. It doesn't air until March, and it's a big role, and it's also on a show that is very heavily. The fans are very engaged online, so hopefully when people see that, it will also get some traction online.
Okay, talk to us about Dinocroc. What did you do?
Dinocroc versus Supergator. Well, that is a 2-part story. It starts with a movie called Cry of the Winged Serpent, which was directed by a guy by the name of Jim Wynorski, and this was during my extra days when I was an extra. I was cast as an extra on this sci-fi movie. It was a Roger Corman production about this winged serpent that would eat people. It was a sci-fi monster movie.
Totally.
And so I went and did a scene. It was in Van Nuys. I was playing a bodyguard for this drug dealer. And then the serpent comes into the backyard and kills all the bodyguards. And so I had to act like I was killed. And in the meantime, during the lunch, I went with the director because it was an ultra low budget, so it was very kind of everything was accessible. And I went with the director to the bank. He had to make a bank run, so I went with him and was talking to him about producing low budget stuff because that's what I wanted to do. And I think it must have stuck in his mind because they called me back. That was on a Tuesday, and they called me back like the next Thursday night to do a night shoot. And so this was in downtown LA, in kind of a seedy part of town, and the scene was these 2 gangs meet in order to discuss one of the gang members that was tossed into the middle of a baseball field during the game. The 2 gangs drive up. I was an extra. I was a gang member. In one, we drove up in our gang minivan and got out. And so the 2 gangs come, and so you have the 2 principal actors playing the gang leaders, and then each of them had 4 extras. And so our gang leader was one of those actors who he was cast because he had an interesting look and an interesting personality, but couldn't really act. And so at one point he had to say the line, "We think he may have had a little help." because the other guy, the other gang leader says maybe he threw himself out in the field, in the middle of the field. And he's like, we think he may have had a little, he could not say, we think he may have had a little help. 10 minutes the director spent trying to get him to say that line in pieces and in the context of the rest of the scene, and couldn't do it. So finally the director says, all right, he points to his assistant director who was standing in front of one of the extras who didn't show up, and says, all right, John, you say it. And John's like, well, I'm a director, not an actor. But he tried anyway. He was like, we think he may have had a little help. And it was terrible. So I could see the director was frustrated, so I put my hand up and I said, okay, put me in, coach. And he goes, all right, Travis, you change places with John, put the camera on Travis. Travis, you say the line. And I had my wool hat pulled down over my eyes and my baggy pants. I'm like, we think he may have had a little help. And it was perfect. One take, the director's like, great, let's move on. So we shot all of our deaths. Everyone on our gang had to die. And then they turned the cameras around to shoot the other gang's coverage, and the gang leader had left. He had apparently just said, this is too shitty for me, and he didn't want a part of it. So he up and left. And it was weird because it was a SAG, even though it was an ultra low budget, it was still a SAG production, and he was getting paid. And so what they did was they, and he was the only other white guy on set. And so the director's like, okay, Travis, you're the only, you've got 5 minutes to learn 3 pages of dialogue. Go to wardrobe and makeup and hair, get something else on. And so I was then cast as the principal. It was my first principal role. Oh my God. And so we were joking because we thought there was going to be a moment where I said, maybe he threw himself out in the field. And they cut to me saying, we think he may have had a little help. Cut back to me saying, oh really? They ended up overdubbing the our gang leader's voice. Okay. So they didn't use my take as but still, it was a very cool scene, and I got to get killed 3 times by the snake monster in that movie. So then, the director of that movie went on to direct Dinocroc versus Supergator, which was the meeting of 2 titans of sci-fi original moviedom, and so he brought me in as a mercenary. It's a very tiny role, but the interesting thing about that was that they called me up and said, yeah, we'd like you to be a mercenary. It's paid. It's $100 or whatever for the day, and could you bring your own costume? And I'm like, I don't have a mercenary costume, but I know one Clive Hawkins who is an actual mercenary. We think, who knows? And I called him up. I said, Clive, do you have a mercenary costume? And he's like, yeah. What kind of mercenary? I was like, well, it's in the jungle in Africa. And he's like, yeah, I got it. I'll bring over some stuff. So Clive brought over this stuff, and it was this flak jacket, jungle hat, goggles, scarf, because if you're in the jungle, you have to wear a scarf so that insects don't get down your neck, or snakes or whatever. Okay. So I showed up on set, and I looked like a mercenary, and they dressed everyone else in black jumpsuits. And I was the only one who looked like an actual mercenary. And if you watch the video, I haven't seen it in ages, but I remember watching our opening scene. The mercenaries are coming through the jungle, and it's black jumpsuit, black jumpsuit, black jumpsuit, actual mercenary. And I'm coming through like a gun. And I had military training. I was in the Air Force ROTC, so I knew how to carry a gun. I knew how to walk through a jungle, and I knew how to, and it's just so funny to see everyone else be so bad at it. And but yeah, that was an experience, and I got to be eaten by I think the Dinocroc ate me.
So now what are you focusing on?
Not any one thing.
Yeah.
My big goal right now, I have a couple big goals. One is to I need to find a manager. Like, I've got an agent, and there's only so much an agent can do for you. And in fact, the one big misconception that a lot of actors have is, as soon as I get an agent, I'll be fine. All I need is an agent, and I'll be set. Well, everything that I've booked has been because I have met a casting director at a casting director workshop that I've paid for. Yeah. So that I've invested in my, a lot of money in workshops, probably 50 or 60 workshops, and it resulted in all of 3 auditions that I've booked. So what I'm looking for now is a manager, because I've got a lot of momentum in my career right now, and I need someone to help me take advantage of that. And not just on a acting standpoint, but also from a producing standpoint. I want help getting my web series out to bigger eyes, bigger audiences. I want to take meetings with networks and pitch ideas and stuff like that. So right now I need a manager who actually has experience in that. So I'm researching some managers. I got to send out emails to try to contact them and see if they're interested in me. I'm also doing a series of conventions for Inspector Spacetime.
Cool.
The Doctor Who fans have been so amazingly engaged in Inspector Spacetime. We did. There was a convention in Chicago where they asked me to do the writer of the official Inspector Spacetime comic book called me and said, "Hey, could you do a video greeting for this convention? We're doing an Inspector Spacetime liars panel. You know, it's where they basically make up stuff about this fake show." And so I did a greeting for them, and it went. Apparently, the panel was standing room only. And it was a huge hit. So Gallifrey 1, which is the world's largest Doctor Who convention here in LA, it actually happens in the end of February, like next week from when we're taping this. They offered me a panel. So I'm actually going to go to the convention and have a panel and also be able to have an autograph booth and all that afterwards. And then next month they're flying me to St. Louis for another convention called Kawakon. Kawakon, and I'm going to have 2 panels there. Yeah, they're flying me out. They're putting me in a hotel room, and so I'm doing that. And in the meantime, I'm still focusing on fundraising for Robot and Jin Gay Guy, because we've got enough views on our first season where I feel like sponsorships are something that companies could do, and it's tax deductible because we've got a relationship with the San Francisco Film Society. So I feel like it's a good sale. I just I've never fundraised before, so I don't know how to go about reaching out to companies. And also I'm planning on doing an Inspector Spacetime web series because it's written. It doesn't look like NBC or Sony or any of the community people care to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and just do it because the fans are asking for it, so we're going to put that together.
Awesome.
So very tons of stuff, lots of coals in the fire. Got my fingers and everything.
You could work with any actor, living or dead. Who would it be?
Oh, easy, Sigourney Weaver.
Really? Why?
I have loved. She is my absolute favorite actress of all time, and it has always been my dream to work with her. I've loved her ever since I saw her in Alien, or probably Ghostbusters was my first exposure to her. But it's my not so secret dream to have her play Gay Guy's mom when we meet. If we can get some stunt casting done for the second season, I would love to have her in as Gay Guy's mom. I think it'd be great too because she plays. She has this great role in a movie called Prayers for Bobby, where she plays a mom who is very against her son's gayness. And I think it'd be really great for her to come in, and my idea for Gay Guy's mom is that she's concerned that Gay Guy isn't gay enough. And so I think it'd be a really cool comedy thing for her to do. And I know she's great with comedy because she does Ghostbusters, Galaxy Quest, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot of young actors that are coming to Los Angeles, and after all this time that you've had here, what's a bit of advice you give them?
Oh gosh, there's not just one thing. I mean, there are as many ways to succeed in Hollywood as there are successful actors. You have to know first and foremost that it is difficult. That it is tough. Like, I have been working my ass off for 9 years and still am not making a living as an actor. Like, even though I did 5 episodes of TV last year, that only added up to, $5,000. That's not enough to live on. It's great. One day of work for $1,000 is amazing, but you can't live on that. So you have to be ready for a long and arduous journey, and you have to be ready for the possibility that you won't succeed. But you also have to be not willing to give up. As long as you are ready, as long as that's your dream and your passion, you have to absolutely push yourself, and you can't stop. So my first year of the Musecast was, I'd been here for 5 years. I passed my 5-year anniversary when I was doing that, and the whole thing was, my series of episodes was made in a context of looking back on my self as I just moved to town. What would I tell myself that I didn't know then? Because I was extremely naive, even then. I'd say go find the Musecast and watch my first 5 episodes of the Musecast.
Tell me about your worst experience on stage.
On stage I have a good story. The Shakespeare production that I did in high school, where I produced the show, there was a weekend where we were doing 3 weekends in a row, and one weekend the guy who played Demetrius was sick. And so I had to play both Bottom and Demetrius. And I didn't have Demetrius memorized, so I was out there with the script, reading his line, and it was terrible. It's one of those every actor has that nightmare where you don't know your lines when you get on stage, or you're cast in a show the night of the opening night or something like that. I have that nightmare all the time, and this was that nightmare come to life. And so I was out there reading from the script on stage in front of, you know, our audience. Kind of terrifying, but really cool. It was, you know, one of those proud moments where you do it because you have to, and that's exactly what an acting career, especially when you're starting out, is made of. Doing things because you have to do them.
Now, is there a bit of advice that someone gave to you that has really stuck with you over the years?
Get into an improv class, because improv is something that casting directors look for, and it will help you in the audition. It'll help you in front of the camera. Produce for yourself. Those are, you know, I don't know if anybody told me to do that, but that was just something I needed to do.
So if you could go back in time and change anything, would you?
You know, the one thing I say, even to this day, is that I should have come to LA earlier. It took me 5 years to get myself out here, and I feel like I missed out on a lot of momentum, a lot of early opportunities. I mean, the lucky thing being an actor, being a male, is that males tend to not be big until they get to their 30s and 40s, middle-aged. So it's not so bad, but I really, you know, there's no real reason I couldn't have come out here earlier, other than the fact that I was being too careful.
Looking back over all of these years, from the beginning of time, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
I think the thing that I'm most proud of Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, it was the first thing that I collaborated with a bunch of different people, and we had several people involved in it, and it is so good. And so it reaches out to so many people, and people are really engaged. Fans are really engaged in it, and it opened the door to me, because a lot of people, because of Robot Ninja and Gay Guy and its success, are wanting to work with me and be involved in my productions. I think that is probably the biggest thing. Even I don't know. I mean, now things are really picking up. So very recently, I've had some other big successes, you know, that we've talked about, but. That has to be the biggest one, I think, for me.
Thank you so much for coming in, Travis.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about you or your projects, where do they go?
A few different places. I accept all friend requests on Facebook, and you can find me. My YouTube channel is Sivartis, youtube.com/SIVARTIS.
Great.
And then Sivartis on Twitter.
Okay.
And I've started to actually use Twitter a little bit more.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I think Tumblr might be the same thing. I might be, I'm slowly transitioning to Tumblr as a way to blog and put myself out there. You can find me all over the internet.
Wonderful. And you're going to be on the season finale of Pretty Little Liars.
Pretty Little Liars. That's going to be March 19th, I believe.
Okay. And the big Doctor Who convention you're going to, when's
that?
The
big one is coming up this next weekend, so my panel is on February 19th.
Okay.
Sunday. So if you want to come and see me in person, you can see it there. And I'm sure there'll be video of it online afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Travis.
My pleasure.
And thank you all so much for stopping by for the Cake Cast. Next week, I'll be speaking with Carolyn Treadwell, writer and actor. You're going to want to catch this. Thanks for joining us.